Welcome to our lecture number 2 of Applied Business Project. In this lecture, we'll be talking about literature review and the theoretical support or background. This is going to be your portfolio task 2, for which the template is available on Blackboard. So let's just start. And the learning outcome for this lecture is that you should be able to understand what is literature and understand how you can search relevant literature through internet and through other sources. And then you will understand what do we mean by theoretical support to our topic, and then how to review our literature. So before we start, just have a look at this portfolio 2 template, and we'll be covering these things in our template 2, starting from our research title. We've already created this in our template 1, but of course we need this again here because you might be changing it. And if you've changed it, go back and also put the same title in your portfolio task 1. And then we'll be talking about theoretical background and support, especially what is literature and how do we give our theoretical support for the topic. And then we'll be talking about the critical review of relevant literature. In this, you'll be using around 20 research papers or research studies to support your topic. And then, of course, if your study is quantitative and if you're testing any hypothesis, you'll have to give us the list of the hypotheses here. Then, because we're using these 20 studies, so we need to give references and make sure that you're using the UV Harvard style for the reference. And this template is available on your Blackboard in the templates folder. So before we move on, think about this statement, which says that if I have seen a little further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. This means that if we need to build some kind of argument, if we need to give some theoretical background to our topic, we need to study some literature which has already been published, and we are referring these giants to the people who have done the research in the area in which we are doing our research. So when you read literature, you use that literature, you use their shoulders, which means that you use that literature to build foundation for your topic, and you make it logical by stating what has already been done and what previous studies have been doing about that particular problem or a particular question. So this is going to be really helpful when you will be making your argument logical. Again, we are referring to this model, and we now want to see that we have some topic with us, but again, it has been supported by the previous literature. It is also coming from the organization, and then we've got this research area that we actually started with. So literature has its importance when we are selecting the topic, because if you don't get any theoretical foundation for your topic, it's not an academic writing. It might be some other report writing, but for academic writings, you need to have some support from literature. So now we've also seen that studies in which we are not using any hypotheses, they are qualitative studies. So in these studies, you usually collect data using interviews or observations or other methods which are not in numbers, which are qualitative. We'll talk about this more in our next lecture, which is lecture 3. But studies which have the hypothesis, they are mostly quantitative, which means that you collect some data using a survey based method, and this data is usually in numbers, and then you use that data to test hypothesis, and after analyzing the data you get to know if your hypotheses are supported or not supported by the data, and then you actually answer the research question. So keep this process or keep this model in mind when you're doing your research. Now, starting with what is literature. So it is simply everything what is known about your topic, everything that is published related to your topic, that is known as literature. So if you're talking about an HRM area, and then you're talking about organizational commitment, maybe there must be something already written on organizational commitment. The same way, if you're talking about brand loyalty, there must be something already written on brand loyalty and relationship with other things. So you have to go back and read the literature and see what has already been done by different researchers. So when you review the literature that has already been published, the researches that have already been done, you're actually conducting your literature review. So it is everything known in your topic, everything already been discussed and researched about in your topic. Now, when you're reviewing your literature, make sure that literature is relevant and it is related to the central topic or the central research question that you're trying to investigate. Which means if your topic is something related to leadership and you're talking about digital marketing, it might not be a relevant literature. So it has to be a relevant literature to your topic when you're reviewing the previous studies which have been done. Then, when you study this literature or the studies which have been done in your area, you will find some empirical literature. Now, this means what the data is saying about the relationship that you're trying to investigate, or how the same question or the same kind of question has already been answered by other researchers, maybe in a different context, maybe in a different country, maybe using a different methodology. So, what is empirically known about the topic, and your research question is your empirical literature, which means what is the available evidence saying about the topic. So, if you're studying about relationship between A and B, what is the literature saying about it? And then you will get some idea about the authenticity or the importance of your research question. The same way, when you will review your literature, the picture is going to emerge, but it might not be a coherent picture. There might be certain inconsistencies, there might be certain gaps, there might be something contradictory to what you're trying to do or what other people have done, and then in relation to what other researchers are saying. So, for example, if you're looking at a relationship between A and B, you might see that there are some papers which are saying there is a positive relationship, and there are some papers which are saying that there's a negative relationship. There might be some papers which are saying there is no relationship. So you will find these tensions and inconsistencies when you will be reviewing literature. So it's important, if you see any tension or gaps in literature, it'll make your topic even more important, because you're trying to search about something people do not have consensus about. So you will find some literature which will give you some empirical data. This kind of literature is more focused on research question rather than the research topic. You might find what is already known about your topic or the kind of relationship you're trying to investigate. So, as I said, you might have some papers saying that there's a negative relationship, and some papers saying there's a positive, and some may also be saying that there's no relationship. And this is something which the evidence of the literature is saying about the topic that you're trying to investigate. And then you have theoretical literature. This means when you'll read literature, you will see that people have used different theoretical foundations to explain the phenomena that they're trying to study. We'll talk about this when we'll go to our theoretical sport part. But you will also find some theories, which means a different lens of people which they've used to investigate or research about some problem or some phenomena. But we will talk about this more in detail in a few slides. So here you're going to find some concepts, some theories, or some nature of relationship which has already been explained with a different lens, or maybe with a different theory. So this is also going to help you in understanding how the mechanism of some relationships or how the research question has been looked at by different people. Now, if we talk about when you're reviewing literature, we've got 5 steps, and we'll talk about each in more detail. So, the first step is searching the literature, then screening the literature, and then organizing, analyzing, and synthesizing of the literature. And then towards the end, we will start writing our literature review. Now, these activities they are not sequential in nature. Sometimes they overlap because, for example, when you are searching for some literature, you might also be screening, but while you're screening, you might also be searching some more literature. And while you're summarizing, you might also be screening some more literature and maybe searching some more literature. So that means all these stages, even when you're writing, you might have to again go back to search, and because there are some missing links that you want to establish now, and you go back and then you again search for some literature. So don't worry, they don't go in sequence, they are not in particular order. Of course you start with searching, but then you might have to come back to searching, screening, and summarizing again when you're in the fourth or fifth step. So starting with the searching literature, you've got many sources from where you can search literature, starting with UV Library, which is always very helpful, and then Google Scholar. Then there are some other platforms from where you can download your papers. So you can use these sources. Plus, if you're using Google Scholar, you can go for some advanced search. You can give it some filters, and it'll help you in identifying a particular paper or a particular research area that you're trying to find. And there are some links on your Blackboard about how to use this UV library. And then you use certain keywords in order to search for your literature. We'll just talk about them when we'll go to Google Scholar. And then lastly, sometimes we are worried about the quality of the papers that we are citing or we are studying. So for that, we will go to the ABS journal list. So if you're downloading or reading any papers from these journals, they're okay, they're fine. They are coming from some good journals. The data has been properly sifted, properly published. So we'll talk about ABS, but let's just go to Google Scholar first and see how do we use it. So if we'll go to Google Scholar, it'll take us to the Google Scholar site, and here what you can do is you can look for articles, and this is where the keywords are going to be really helpful. So for example, if I am interested in leadership, so what I will do is I will type leadership styles and employee performance, let's say. So now it will give me these papers which are effect of leadership style on employee performance. If you're connected to the university internet, you will have access to many of these papers, but if you're doing it from home, you might have some limited access. But if it is saying the PDF is available, it will be available. Now on this side, if you look at these filters, you can see since 2024, since 2023, currently it is saying anytime. So it is showing you data from all times. For example, this paper is from 2015, 2020, 2014. Generally, it's good to read variety of papers, but if they are very recent, especially if your topic is something like digital marketing or the areas which are very rapidly changing, then you should refer to the latest literature in Google Scholar or wherever you're searching. So if you just limit it to 2020, for example, now it will only show you papers which are published either in 2020 or after that. And if you want even latest papers, you can go for 2023. Now it will only show you papers from 2023 or 2024. Uh, the same way you can give it a range. For example, if you want papers from 2010 to 2024. You can give it a limit, and then it'll only show you papers within these 14 years. So make sure you understand this, and then of course by clicking this area you can go and you can then download these papers and they can you read about it. So let's suppose you want to download this paper. There's a PDF available, and if you click this, it'll take you to this paper, which is saying that it was published in Total Quality Management and Business Excellence. And my suggestion to you is start with reading the abstract. So this is the abstract. This will give you the summary of this paper. And before reading the rest of the paper, this will give you a good idea if it is relevant to you or not. Now, it will all depend on what kind of keywords you're using here. But you can also use this advanced search, which is here, and then you get some more option of filters. For example, as we said that we want papers from 2010 to 2024, you can also type the name of the journal and then by the authors and some other filters. So you can also use these filters to get to your required papers. So this is how we actually use Google Scholar, but of course you can use any other sources, but make sure that you're using the quality journals when you're reading the papers. So that can be established from this link, which is ABS journals. And if you go to this website and just type the name of the journal here, for example, we will type business, and it will give us the names of the journals which have this word business in them. So from here you can see if they are in the list, then that means they are authentic, they are fine, and you can read papers from them. Let's just go back and see what else do we have to do. So after searching the literature, of course, we have to screen the literature. This means we need two types of screening. Uh, and here, abstract can be really helpful because this can summarize things for you. And before again reading the rest of the paper, you can start with the abstract. Uh, from here, you first will know about the quality of the content that can also be established using the ABS journal ranking. And then you will look at the keywords which are there in the abstract, and you will see that if it is relevant to you or not. And then of course the relationships which are being discussed in that paper, and then the context, which means in which country, which industry that research has taken place. And then the second thing that you need to see is the methodology that those researchers have used. So what kind of data was collected and how it was analyzed? What was the sample like, which means from where they've collected the data, and is it relevant to you or not? So make sure when you're screening about the context, and then of course the methodology, and this will give you a good idea if the paper is relevant to you or not. And this can also give you some guidelines about how you're going to do your research, because sometimes it is possible to just repeat the methodology because it has already been used and it has been proven right. So you can also use somebody's methodology as long as it goes with your research question. Then, of course, you will start summarizing your literature review and then documenting, which means it's not that you've read it and that's it. You need to write the summary or the main points or the main themes from the review of the literature at some place. So sometimes people use the Excel sheet where they make the rows and columns, and here for example they will write the name of the author, year, the variables which are used, the relationship, the methodology that has been used. So you can come up with your own method of summarizing. So when you have to write literature, you have one file instead of multiple files, and it's easy for you to write it. The filing system is very important. How you save data will really help you in writing your literature review. So make sure you have a good system of summarizing and documenting that data. Once you have the data with you and you've summarized it, you've understood it, and then you might see that how to create folders or subfolders. So, for example, the papers which are talking about for a particular relationship, they've discussed the negative side of it. You will put them in separately, and then you segregate the rest of them as positive or no relation. And then, of course, after you will do that, you will start analyzing, which means you will start breaking the literature in different parts for your gap analysis, which means now you are able to see what has been done and what has not been done, in which context these studies have been conducted, and where there's a gap in terms of context. And then, of course, you will start your synthesis, which means you will find connections among different papers. Some paper will be converging to one idea, and some will be diverging from the same idea. So here you will be looking at the similarities and the contradictory findings or different methodologies that people have used. And then, of course, we will start writing the literature because we have organized it. Now we need to write it in the form of paragraph, in the form of a kind of argument. So, for that, if you use headings or the guidelines, for example, in the template, they will be helpful. And then, of course, do not worry about it, because generally, when you will start writing, it might not be coherent, it might not be a very strong argument, but once you revisit it, revise it, you will eventually come up with a very logical and very good argument of your literature. And make sure when you're doing this, you're citing literature properly in UV Howard style, and you're giving due credit to the writers who have done work in your area. If you need, of course, you need to take help from books, and then eventually from your supervisors who are going to give you formative feedback. Uh, then you've got some other points to note is recognize the topic's history. So when the particular term started, who started it, and then how it was transformed into something else, if it has transformed into something else. When writing, justify your research, that it's important. For example, some people, even when they write about employee satisfaction, which has been researched a lot, they make it look like that it's still very important. So make sure when you're writing it, you justify your research question and the research area very well, and then be critical, and at the same time make good argument. We'll talk about some tips how to make your argument better. My suggestion is start writing. Even if you start writing early when you're organizing your literature review, it'll be very helpful, because you need to revise it anyway. So sometimes people have to give it like 10 revisions, maybe 20 revisions, in order to come up with a good draft. And then there's a proverb that people use to critically evaluate literature, which is prompt. So that means where did the idea come from? Who wrote it? So this is the history of that particular topic. And then how is that particular literature or paper relevant to what you're trying to study? That is relevance. And then, of course, objectivity, awareness of the impact of author, and maybe biases or maybe belief systems or opinions of those particular authors that you need to account for, and then methods which have been used by those people. And then, of course, the presentation, your argument should be very clear, and it should be in a kind of story form or in an argument form, which engage the reader. And then, of course, does your topic still have currency? Is it still important? And you need to make sure that the topic is not outdated. So when you're writing critical review, it has to be, we call it thinking about thinking. So how other people have thought about your topic, you will have to think about their thinking, and then you need to come up with your own argument. There are certain tips that we need to use. So first of all, When you're critically evaluating literature, make sure it is a quality literature, which means it's published in a good journal, it is relevant to your topic, and it is credible. And of course, whenever you're using literature, cite appropriately, give due credit to the researchers. And then you need to draft and revise. So do not worry, the first drafts are never good. So make sure you're revising them again and again. And if you need help, of course, you can take help from anybody who's expert in that, especially show it to your supervisor and show it to your field coordinator. They'll be able to help you. Connect your research with the research that you're citing. Make sure you're supporting your hypothesis. Make sure you're making a logical argument around your research questions, and the studies that you're citing, they actually support what you're trying to say. And again, you need to be proofreading your work again and again. Most of the times there are formatting errors, punctuation errors, grammar, or other errors, so make sure you do that. And tense consistency. For example, in literature review, most of the times you use past tense. For example, saying Smith argued, and then at other point you're saying John argues. So make sure you're using a consistent method of writing so it doesn't look informal. Then use transitional phrases, which is moreover, furthermore, in contrast to, however. These gives a very academic touch to your writing. And then of course you need to avoid ambiguity when you're writing. Be very clear. Citations should be done very well, and especially using UV Howard style. Use the quotation marks where you're using the direct quotes from some paper or somebody who has written. And then use formal academic language and avoid slangs or informal expressions. Generally, when you're writing terminology, be consistent. For example, if you're talking about turnover intention, sometimes people just write turnover intention and then they write only turnover, and then they use absenteeism, and then they use absent from work. Make sure whatever terminology you're using, it is consistent, because even with the minor change of word, the meaning of the word or the context of the word changes. So your terminology should be the same throughout the paper. And also, when you're using abbreviations, please make sure you're not using non-famous abbreviations. So, for example, if I am saying employee creativity, although I've said it when I was writing it for the first time, employee creativity, I've written the full word and then I've given EC, and then the rest of the document I'm using EC. This is not a good thing to do. On the other hand, if you've got some abbreviation which is like HRM, now this is famous, people can understand it, reader will have a good idea what HRM is. You can use it. For example, if you're using AI, people will understand it. But if you're using something like this, for example, employee engagement, and you're saying EE, this might not make much sense. So make sure you're using a good terminology and good abbreviations. Then, when you're writing, avoid sweeping statements, because sometimes we say this kind of study has never been conducted. Nobody has ever done it. So avoid that. Don't use that, because as a human being, we cannot have all the knowledge in the world. So, yes, maybe according to our knowledge, it has not been conducted. But then again, we need to avoid these sweeping statements. And then when you're writing, write it as a third person. Avoid writing I, we, or are. Instead, you can write the study says, the data for the study will be collected, or the data for the study has been analyzed. So use these words instead of saying I, we, or are. Then our next topic is the use of theory and how does it relate to topic. Now, this is something which is important, but at the same time, it becomes difficult to understand what do we mean by theory? So I'll give you some examples towards the end to make you understand that how we incorporate theory or use theory to explain the phenomena or the relationship that we are trying to investigate. So the role of theory in research is to provide a conceptual framework that helps explain, predict, or understand the phenomena. It guides the formulation of research question and the interpretation of data and the development of the conclusion. Now, again, let's have a look at some examples and see how we are saying that some models or some theories help us to understand our research question or what you're trying to investigate. So, if we look at this first model, which is IDA model, attention, interest, desire, action. This is something that we use in marketing. So it explains the stages a customer goes through before making a purchase. So gaining attention is the first stage, then sparking interest, creating desire in the consumer's mind, and then they will take action. So, if, for example, we are trying to understand how the digital advertising campaigns capture attention, maintain consumer interest, build desire, and then eventually it leads to the purchase of some product, we will use this model to explain what we are trying to do. So, for example, if I'm interested in knowing how the digital marketing strategies are impacting the purchase decision of a consumer, I might be using this model to justify that there is some link between these two variables. The same way, if you move forward and see, there's a model known as TAM model or technology acceptance model. This is widely used theory in marketing and technology related research, particularly for understanding how users come to accept the new technology. So, for example, if we want to know how the, the consumers are adopting mobile payments in the retail sector, we will be using this STAM model. So it gives us some kind of foundation. For example, it says that if consumers find mobile payments useful and it's easy to use and because it's user friendly and everything, then they will adopt it. Otherwise, they will not adopt it. And let's just go to another example. For example, this human relation theory. This says that employees' satisfaction, well being, and social connections are key to increasing productivity in organizations. So, if we want to know something related to how employees uh, face or go through this some organizational change, we will use this human relation theory. And when a company undergoes restructuring, like a manager, the human relation approach can be used to focus on maintaining employee morals. So, if you take care of your employees, their productivity might improve. If you have something which is related to this kind of topic, you might be using human relation theory. Yet another example is contingency theory. This says that organizations are different, they've got different structure, different environment, therefore, one particular model cannot suit all organizations. So, if we want to know which leadership style is better in crisis management, then of course we will be applying contingency theory because there's no one leadership style which works for all organizations. So we will be using this contingency theory. Another example can be consumer behavior theory. This theory examines the psychological, social, and cultural factors that influence consumers' purchasing intention. So, if you have something related to purchase intention, what factors are influencing the purchase intention of consumers, you might be using this theory. So, this way, you have to integrate certain theory, certain model with your own topic, which will help you in giving a solid foundation to what you're trying to say. So it will help you building a very strong and a good coherent kind of argument. So I hope you'll have some idea. And when you'll be reading different papers related to your research, you'll also come across these theories because people have already used these theories to support their argument. Then we've got plenty of support from UV and also from our workshops. Uh, so you can take help from these links and these websites. Also, I would strongly recommend that read some good chapter on literature review, how to write critical literature review. And when you're reading papers from different researchers, make sure you look at their style of writing and how they're building argument, how they're citing the previous literature in order to build their own argument. So, this is all about our second lecture. In the next lecture, we'll talk about methodology and ethics form, and then I'll see you there. Thank you very much.